Welcome to the Bible Forum. It's Sunday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern. I'm Warren Sprouse, your host and your guide. We're going to be spending the next couple of hours together. We will be recording what is being said here and putting it out in segments, both on this website and the Facebook website and the YouTube website. So you'll be able to see the individual. And we also put up the whole thing on the Facebook, I guess. Facebook, you can watch the entire show without interruption. You get all the little ins and outs that we go through talking to the folks in the chat room. You can get into the chat room from the website. Just click the link. We've got some folks starting to gather there, and we'll spend some time there. If you have questions, comments and stuff, that's the place to put them. Check that as we go along, and we'll see how that goes. Got a lot of stuff to talk about. I think we've got a good lineup. I'm encouraged by it anyway. We're going to talk about the new American culture. Got to go back to the first Thanksgiving, and then we're going to kind of walk our way forward and look at some of the things that we have now and compare the two. Then we're going to look at where America is headed, looking at what we got and who's doing what and where's that taking us. How's this all working out for us? And then we're going to look at how to destroy America. Governor Lamb, I forgot where he was governor, out Midwest, Arizona or Colorado or one of those places out there. He's giving us 8 ways to destroy America. Very interesting stuff. We'll take a look at that. And we'll also look at the why of transgenderism. Not the what, but the why. What's behind all of this? What's really going on? This isn't something that just suddenly arrived on the scene, organically, as they say. It's deliberate. We're just going to look at why and who's doing this, and what is the point here? What are they trying to accomplish? And then finally, we've got resurrecting the Sunday sermon. We used to do the Sunday sermon, and then something happened and it moved away and never came back, and folks have commented on it, so we're going to go back to that. Looking at why the world is so intent on creating a new form of Christianity and a new gospel with a new worship form. And then why in the world are you going along with it? The Bible has a lot to say about this kind of thing, and we'll take a look at that from the scriptures. But now we're going to take a look at the week in the news. This is the kind of thing that has happened to us as we were going about our everyday business. The president of these United States has decided that he's not going to sanction Saudi Arabia for the murder of this journalist, this Saudi Arabian journalist who was living here in the United States. His name is Jamal Khashoggi, and he was planning a radio program from Turkey. Now, nobody with a brain thought this was anything but a sanctioned assassination. And things like that originate at the highest levels in the Saudi Arabian system. So now that this has happened, what do? Do you go after Saudi Arabia? Do you attack their commerce, their political standing? Do you sanction Saudi Arabia, make her a pariah in the international community? Or do you register your outrage, stopping short of blaming the high muckety-muck, the prince? And in so doing, you protect your commercial and military enterprise? We've got a lot invested over there. And do you do this with the idea that you now have created a card in your playing deck? A card that you can pull out at some point in the future should Saudi Arabia get out of line and play that card? Look what we did for you kind of thing? And would we dare admit that there's nothing we can really do about what Saudi Arabia wants to do? Saudi Arabia, for all her willingness to support terrorism in the region, is a U.S. ally. She's important to Israel's protection. She's important to many nations and individuals who have a great deal invested over there. It's always good to have, pardon the pun, a trump card in your hand. And they're not alone in this sort of thing. There are many Americans traveling to and from that country, and they're doing all sorts of strange things and have. It's not a Western civilization. So what do we gain by sanctioning Saudi Arabia? And that may be some of the things that are wandering through the halls of government there in Washington. What do you do? We all know something about facial recognition technology. We know that it is a growing industry, that it serves many government, legal, and financial purposes. But did you know that facial technology can now be found in a growing number of schools and in retail stores? Claire Garvey is a senior associate at Georgetown Law's Center on Privacy and Technology, an organization that studies the technology and its privacy implications. She tells us that facial technology can now be found in more and more schools, more and more retail stores, in order to identify people who may pose a security risk. Some stores also use facial recognition in an attempt to determine shopper sentiment, giving retailers the opportunity to adjust their sales pitch. They can tell by the way people look as they peruse their products. One company in Israel claims its software can flag potential terrorists simply by scanning the facial features and expressions. I would add that a number of people who want to search their ancestry by means of DNA, people who willingly spit in a bag to send their DNA to companies they don't know anything about, who then match them with what they already have to see where you fit. And as a result, your DNA is now on file with them, meaning it's on file. It's digitalized. It's available. They can now find you by where you leave your DNA. This week we were told how criminals are now able to fit a gas pump with a scanner. I know, that's old technology. But this is from inside the pump where you can't see it, you cannot detect it. But how your smartphone can. This is the brave new world as we move forward. It's a world the Bible predicted 4,000 years ago. Speaking of the Bible depicts a time called the Great Tribulation, when a database, a digital ID, will be available to determine whether or not you are loyal to this new dictator, to the new system. It's not it's not what you and I think. It isn't certainly anything that we were thinking about 50 years ago as we were reading these texts. But as we do read through the Bible, we find that there's a system in place during the Great Tribulation. If you are not a loyal subject, if you have not bowed to this dictator, if you have not accepted his religion, it is literally off with your head. Refuse to take the mark. Refuse to have that planted on your body, however they're going to do it. A mark by which you buy and sell. Without it, you cannot function. Refuse that mark, and it's off with your head. It's a serious and a most effective way to mark the loyalists versus the rebels. And how far off in the distance is all of that? Well, it's pretty much here now. It's certainly closer than you think, given all the technology that's now in place. The nations are all lined up, and the ones that are not lined up are lining up. The technology exists. It's now being used. All we need is an emergency and the will to use it. Facial recognition software is fast becoming a necessary evil. Those who are law-abiding have nothing to fear. Not now. But conspiracy theorists and Bible Christians know how it can be used, how it will be used, and how it will be a problem for people who don't want to participate in the system. But how to stop it, how to defeat it, how to get around it. It is not possible. Even today, you want a driver's license? Your picture, your social security card, your date of birth, your address is all in the government database. You want a job? They check stuff like that. They add to it. In the future, do you want criminals to be quickly, easily found? Do you want to get that credit card out of your wallet? You know, the one that can be stolen or can be used without your knowledge? We are going to bow to this thing. We're going to get into this game. We're going to be a part of it. Oh, there'll always be people up in the mountains that don't want to have anything to do with any of it, or you too. But the vast majority of people are going to get into this system. It's going to take a great deal of personal commitment, conviction, not to. And then where do you hide? Well, there is no place to hide. A recent Newsweek article warns us that the, quote, number of witches is rising dramatically across the United States of America. It's doing this as millennials reject Christianity, and more millennials are turning from Christianity and looking to astrology and other pagan religions more and more all the time. This from Newsweek.com, just published recently. According to the article, there are 1.5 million potential practicing witches in the United States. From 1990 to 2008, Trinity College in Connecticut ran 3 large, detailed religion surveys. Those have shown that Wicca grew tremendously during that period. From an estimated 8,000 Wiccans in 1990, they found there were about 340,000 practitioners in 2008. According to them, there are more witches than there are Presbyterians. Now, I'm guessing that's Presbyterian USA, since they have just under 1.5 million members. There are other kinds of Presbyterians out there, Presbyterians that apparently liberal news outlets haven't heard about, at least not yet, or they're just not big enough, noisy enough. According to someone called Julie Roys, R-O-Y-S, an author of a piece entitled Wicca has effectively repackaged witchcraft for millennial consumption, says that no longer is witchcraft and paganism satanic and demonic. Now it is a pre-Christian tradition that promotes free thought and understanding of earth and nature. All right. You've heard about Pastor Andrew Brunson, man who was imprisoned in Turkey for over 2 years, accused of aiding groups which sought the overthrow of the current president, Erdogan. Well, the pastor sat down. He's out, right? He's out, and the Donald got him out, put pressure on him, and it worked. This pastor sat down with the hosts of CBS this morning to talk about that experience. Pastor Brunson noted that for a while he was in solitary confinement. He said there was very little contact with the outside. I could see Noreen, his wife, for example, 35 minutes a week, and that through a window glass, talking by phone. He says she actually is very strong and had to take me through this thing emotionally and spiritually. She was the only one from whom I could receive truth. So when she would come in, she would encourage me. And that's what kept me going through the next week. Pastor Brunson was eventually moved to an overcrowded prison where he shared a cell designed for 8 people. There were 20 inmates in that cell. Brunson told the host that it took some time before he was allowed to have any books, let alone a Bible. But when he was finally given a Bible, he said 2 Timothy got him through the hard parts of his prison stay. I can imagine a pastor in prison going to the prison epistles. And that's what Paul was writing to Timothy. He read 2 Timothy, where Paul talks about suffering and finishing the race well. He said, "This became my prayer. I want to be faithful and endure and finish well." Though the experience was trying for the couple and their 3 children, Brunson said he knew God would use the experience for good. He said, "I believe that God was involved in this for us because I think of the millions of people who prayed for Turkey during that time." Just recently, we found out in a publication called Science News that an archaeologist, his name is Philip Silva of the Trinity Southwest University in Albuquerque, has been studying Sodom and Gomorrah. And what he has found, and it has apparently been corroborated by other scientists, what he found is that a superheated blast from the skies obliterated cities and farming settlements north of the Dead Sea around 3,700 years ago. They did all this by means of radiocarbon dating and applying that to previously unearthed minerals. Scientists believe they are looking at what appears to have been a catastrophic event. The instantaneous crystallization of minerals appears to have been formed at high temperatures and were probably formed by means of a massive outburst caused by a meteor that exploded in the atmosphere, instantly destroying civilization in a 25-kilometer wide circular plain called Middle Gore. Now, Science News said the scientists believe this event also pushed a bubbling brine of Dead Sea salts over once fertile farmland. Silva reported the conclusions recently at an annual meeting of the American Schools of Oriental Research. I would suggest you merely have to go into the Old Testament in the Bible and learn what was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. It's what's going on in America today. And that God judged the 5 cities of the plain and brought fire down from heaven and destroyed those cities and contaminated that area so that it, to this day, does not grow anything. saving Lot and his 2 daughters alone out of all of it. 2 angels did that for them. And science is now telling us the Bible was right. Do you know how many times science and circumstance and other things have told us the Bible is right? Often it comes about that they'll declare the Bible is wrong. They're wrong about this because obviously science doesn't support that, or the facts don't support that. But if you stick around long enough, usually a few hundred years, they find enough information and they come back and they say, oh, we were wrong and the Bible's right. The Bible's been right about everything so far. We'll see how it works out in the future.